The moment the restaurant door closed behind him, the single dad felt every pair of eyes burning into his back. It wasn't the usual kind of attention he sometimes received as a man arriving alone, still carrying the exhaustion of work and parenthood on his shoulders. This time, the attention felt different, sharper, deliberate, like anticipation mixed with cruelty. He didn't know that a group of people sitting at the far end had set him up. He didn't know they had arranged a blind date for him as a joke, pairing him with a young deaf woman, because they expected him to panic, to fumble, to fail in a way they could laugh about later. But what he did next would leave them speechless, shattering every expectation they held about kindness, dignity, and the strength of human connection. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us of the goodness still left in people, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. It truly helps us create more heart-touching stories for you. His name was Aaron, a 36-year-old single father who spent his days working double shifts at a small repair shop and his nights struggling to be both mother and father to his 6-year-old son, Liam. Life had not been gentle with him. His wife had passed away suddenly 3 years earlier, leaving behind a mountain of medical bills and a little boy who still sometimes woke up crying for a mother he could barely remember. Aaron carried that weight silently. He never complained, never asked for help. Every morning, he woke up, believing he could give his son a better life, even if it carved pieces out of him day by day. When his coworkers pressured him into trying a blind date, he hesitated. He didn't have time for romance, didn't have confidence left to offer, and certainly didn't have the energy to walk into something unpredictable. But they teased him until he finally agreed, unaware they had cruel intentions masked as playful matchmaking. They knew he wouldn't verify who the girl was he trusted too easily. They knew he wouldn't question them, but what they didn't know was that he had a heart they could never anticipate, one shaped by loss, compassion, and sacrifice. The woman waiting for him was named Maya. She sat at a small table by the window, her hands resting gently in her lap, her entire posture radiating quiet resilience. She had been deaf since childhood, living in a world where silence was both her refuge and her cage. She communicated primarily through sign language, but she had learned to read lips with impressive accuracy. She knew nothing of the joke. She came because she believed someone had genuinely wanted to meet her. She came with sincerity, with hope, with the fragile excitement that maybe finally she would find someone who didn't look at her with pity or confusion. As Aaron approached the table, the people who had orchestrated the trick leaned forward with malicious anticipation, waiting for him to freeze or stumble or awkwardly escape. But Aaron didn't do any of that. Instead, he paused for a moment, taking in her gentle smile and the way she slightly lifted her chin when she noticed him, a subtle gesture of welcome, even if she heard nothing. He realized instantly that she couldn't hear when she tapped her ear and shook her head softly in greeting. But something in her eyes, something earnest and vulnerable, made his pulse steady instead of spike. He didn't panic. He didn't back away. He simply smiled, sat down, and allowed the moment to be human instead of uncomfortable. It stunned everyone who was watching. The first few minutes were challenging. Aaron didn't know sign language. He didn't know the rules or rhythms of communicating with someone who couldn't hear him. But instead of giving up or retreating into awkward silence, he tried. He truly tried. He wrote words on a napkin, pointed to menu items, gestured slowly and respectfully, letting her take her time to read his lips, and she responded with warmth, appreciating his effort more than he could ever know. She had been on dates before where men gave up within seconds, too intimidated by her silence, too impatient to meet her halfway. But Aaron was different. His patience felt steady and sincere, woven from the same quiet strength that allowed him to survive heartbreak and rebuild his world for his son. As the minutes passed, something extraordinary began to happen. The two of them fell into a rhythm that was uniquely their own. Maya's hands told stories, graceful and fluid, painting images in the air with movements that felt almost poetic. Aaron watched her intently, not because he understood all of it, but because he wanted to. And the more he watched, the more he learned not just her words, but her heart. There was a softness to her, but also a fierce independence, as if she had spent years proving she didn't need saving, only understanding. In return, he began sharing glimpses of his own life, carefully writing out parts of his story. He told her about his son, about the struggles and the exhaustion, about the guilt he carried for never feeling like he was doing enough. She listened, truly listened, not with her ears, but with her presence. She touched the words he wrote as if she could absorb his pain through her fingertips, offering comfort without pity. Across the restaurant, the group who had set them up slowly fell silent. They had expected chaos, comedy, discomfort. They hadn't expected tenderness. And when they saw the way the two smiled at each other, the way they leaned forward as if each had found something precious in the other, their amusement transformed into something unfamiliar: shame. As the evening unfolded, Aaron did something that left them stunned beyond words. When the server came to take their order and addressed Maya too quickly, not realizing she needed to read lips, Aaron gently intervened. He positioned himself so she could see his face clearly, repeating the server's words slowly and patiently, making sure she didn't miss anything. It was such a simple gesture, yet so deeply compassionate that several diners looked away, feeling the weight of their own assumptions. No one had ever done that for her, she later realized. No one had ever taken the time. Eventually, the night drew to a close, but neither of them wanted it to end. They walked together outside the restaurant, standing in the glow of warm streetlights as cars passed by quietly. Maya signed something to him, a shy smile curving her lips. He didn't understand her hands yet, but he understood the emotion. So he touched his chest, then pointed toward her, a universal gesture that needed no translation. Her eyes shimmered in response. What he didn't notice was that his co-workers had followed them outside, the same cruel group now standing frozen, having witnessed a lesson they never saw coming. They had set up a joke, but it turned into something sacred, something that revealed a truth they could no longer ignore. They saw a man who could have been broken by life yet chose kindness. They saw a woman who had been judged her entire life yet opened her heart once more. They saw connection triumph over cruelty, and it humbled them. In the following weeks, something beautiful grew between Aaron and Maya. He began taking sign language classes in the evenings, after putting his son to bed. He practiced every day, sometimes fumbling, sometimes getting frustrated, but never giving up. The first time he signed, "How are you?" to her without looking at a reference, she cried, not because the sign was perfect, but because someone had finally tried to speak her language. Maya became a gentle, healing presence in Aaron's life, showing him that silence could be comforting, that communication was more than words, and that love did not need to be loud to be strong. She connected deeply with little Liam too, who found her hands absolutely magical, as if she could tell stories just by waving her fingers. He adored her, and she adored him. But the story didn't end there. One afternoon, one of the very co-workers who had set up the cruel prank approached Aaron while he was picking up Liam from school. With tears in his eyes, the co-worker confessed what they had done. He apologized, genuinely ashamed of how thoughtless they had been. Aaron didn't explode with anger. He didn't lash out. Instead, he simply nodded and said he hoped they had learned something important. And they had, because witnessing what blossomed between him and Maya had changed them in ways they had never expected. Months later, Maya stood in Aaron's small living room, watching him practice a new sign he had been learning in secret. His hands trembled slightly, not from lack of confidence, but from the magnitude of the moment. When he finally signed the phrase perfectly, her heart nearly burst. It was the moment she realized just how deeply he loved her. If this story touched your heart even a little bit, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support truly helps us bring more meaningful stories to life. Before the ending, please comment below. Kindness changes everything. On a warm evening filled with soft laughter and the gentle rustle of summer leaves, Aaron held both Maya's hands and signed the words that mattered. Most words he had practiced 100 times, words that carried the weight of his love, his gratitude, and his hope for their future. As she watched him, tears filled her eyes, not because she couldn't hear the world around her, but because she could feel everything that mattered. She felt chosen, understood, cherished. She felt seen. And for the first time in years, Aaron felt whole again. Together, in the quiet world, they built where hands spoke louder than voices and hearts beat in perfect sync. They found the kind of love no one expected, not even themselves. A love that began as a joke to others but became a miracle to them. A love that proved that kindness, effort, and sincerity could turn even the cruelest intentions into the most beautiful endings. And for everyone who witnessed their story, one truth remained unforgettable. Sometimes the most meaningful connection come from the most unexpected places, and sometimes the quietest love is the one that echoes the loudest in our hearts.